I remember the conversation perfectly. It was late 2021, and a friend, his eyes lit up with the face of a recent convert, was trying to convince me that a JPEG file of a smoking monkey was a safer investment than gold. Not just any monkey, of course. A tokenized monkey, unique and unrepeatable, verified on the blockchain. He told me it was the future of art, of ownership, and probably of humanity itself. Meanwhile, all I could think was that monkey had the same bored expression that I was feeling at that moment. Fast forward to today. According to a recent report by Dap Gamble, 95% of the more than 73,000 non-fungible token collections, NFTs, they analyzed have a market capitalization of 0 Ether. Zero. About 23 million people have assets in their digital wallets that are now worth less than the air we breathe. We went from a market that moved $2.8 billion a month at its peak to an almost sepulchral silence. The question isn't what happened. The question is, how on earth did we come to believe that a digital receipt for a drawing made in 5 minutes was the new renaissance? How did an entire industry get built on such a fragile foundation that it collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane? To understand this monumental fall, to see how we went from euphoria to ruin, we have to break down this disaster into 5 acts. 5 lessons in psychology, marketing, and greed that explain the rise and spectacular fall of NFTs. Buckle up, because this journey into the heart of digital madness will teach you more about human nature than any economics book ever could. It all started with an idea as simple as it was brilliant: artificial scarcity. In the digital world, everything could be copied infinitely. An image, a song, a text. You could make millions of perfect copies with a single click, which made the concept of ownership of a digital file, at best, philosophical. NFTs promised to change that. Using blockchain technology, the same that powers cryptocurrencies, it became possible to create a unique certificate of authenticity for any digital file. Suddenly you could own a GIF. Not the GIF itself, which anyone could still view and download, but the original, the token that represented it. Early experiments like CryptoPunks in 2017 or CryptoKitties planted the seed. They were ugly, pixelated, and pretty absurd, but they proved that the concept worked. People were willing to pay for the ownership of a unique digital kitten. From a marketing perspective, this is pure genius. It's the De Beers strategy applied to code. Diamonds aren't actually as rare in nature as people think, but De Beers controlled the supply for decades to create a perception of scarcity and therefore value. NFTs did the same thing with pixels. The peak of this craze was the sale of the artwork Every Days, the first 5,000 days by the artist Beeple for $69 million. $69 million for a collage of JPEGs. It was as if, all of a sudden, the world had convinced itself that you could only enjoy the Mona Lisa if you bought a post-it signed by the Louvre saying it was yours, while millions of people kept taking pictures of it. Scarcity, even if it was completely manufactured, created the first layer of the bubble. But for that scarcity to matter, you need someone to show it off to. And that brings us directly to the second act of our drama. Once you have an artificially scarce product, you need to create an exclusive club around it. And this is where the most successful NFT projects, like the Bored Ape Yacht Club, proved to be masters of tribal marketing. They weren't just selling an image of a bored-looking ape, they were selling a membership. Buying a bored ape wasn't a transaction, it was an initiation. Suddenly you had access to a private Discord server where you could rub shoulders with celebrities like Jimmy Fallon, Snoop Dogg, or Eminem. You were invited to exclusive parties on yachts and in luxury warehouses in New York. Your Twitter profile picture was no longer just a simple circle, but a hexagon, a signal to the rest of the world that you were in. You were part of the club. This mechanism is one of the most powerful tools in consumer psychology, the desire to belong. Humans are social beings, and the need to be part of a group is fundamental. NFTs took advantage of this in a ruthless way, driven by the most powerful engine of the digital age, FOMO. You saw people on social media multiplying their money 100-fold, joining exclusive circles, and living a life of digital luxury. How could you not want a piece of that? The customer acquisition cost was practically zero. The customers themselves became evangelists, showing off their membership in the club and attracting new members. Having one of those apes as your profile picture was the digital equivalent of parking a Lamborghini in front of a nightclub. It doesn't get you anywhere faster, but it sends a very clear status signal. The value wasn't in the art, it was in the access. With scarcity already established and a fervent community operating like a recruitment machine, only one ingredient was missing for the bubble to reach the stratosphere: an absurd amount of money with nothing better to do. Context is everything, and the NFT boom didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened during a perfect storm of economic and social factors. We were in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. Millions of people were stuck at home, bored, and with more free time than they knew what to do with. At the same time, governments around the world, especially in the United States, pumped trillions of dollars into the economy through stimulus checks and quantitative easing policies. Interest rates were at rock bottom, making it unattractive to keep money in the bank. The stock market and cryptocurrencies were in the midst of a historic bull run. People had money in their pockets, access to investment platforms from their phones, and a taste for risk that bordered on recklessness. NFTs were presented as the perfect opportunity. The marketing was flawless. Democratization of art. Take control of your finances. Be part of the Web 3.0 revolution. It was an irresistible narrative for a generation that felt excluded from traditional markets. Suddenly, you didn't need a broker or a degree in finance. All you needed was a MetaMask wallet and enough Ethereum to buy a drawing of a penguin wearing a pirate hat. It became a global casino open 24/7, where the chips were digital artworks and everyone swore they had a foolproof system. The system, of course, simply consisted of buying something in the hope that someone even dumber would be willing to pay more for it tomorrow. Celebrities, whether paid or not, acted as the perfect social lubricant, giving a veneer of legitimacy to the whole scheme. But when you build a skyscraper on foundations made of pure hype and helicopter money, it only takes a small tremor for everything to come crashing down. And the tremors came, first in the form of an uncomfortable technical truth and then as a tsunami of scams. This is where the beautiful house of cards began to wobble. People started asking uncomfortable questions. The most basic question was, what exactly am I buying? The answer for most people was disappointing. You weren't buying the image itself or its copyright. You were buying a token on the blockchain that contained a link, a simple link pointing to where the image was hosted, usually on a centralized server. If that server went down or the company managing it disappeared, your $1 million NFT would just point to a 404 error. The promise of decentralized and eternal ownership was, in many cases, just a facade. Buying an NFT was like buying a certificate that said you owned the Mona Lisa, but the certificate was written on a post-it note guarded by a third party, and the Mona Lisa was still hanging in the Louvre for anyone to take a picture of. The famous phrase, "you can right-click and save," became a meme, but it encapsulated a fundamental truth that enthusiasts didn't want to admit. Scarcity was a technical illusion sustained by collective faith. To this technical fragility was added a much dirtier problem: scams. The market, being unregulated, became the Wild West. We saw rug pulls where project creators raised millions and then disappeared with the money. We saw influencers promoting collections only to sell their own shares when the price went up, a practice known as pump and dump. The case of Logan Paul and his CryptoZoo project was emblematic. He promised a revolutionary game and delivered a broken product, leaving his followers with millions in losses. Projects like Pixelmoon raised $70 million promising a high-quality game and ended up delivering art so ridiculously bad that it became a joke. Trust, the pillar on which the entire ecosystem was built, began to erode at a dizzying pace, with faith shattered and easy money starting to dry up. The final act of this global tragicomedy was set. The coup de grace did not come from within, but from outside. Throughout 2022, the global macroeconomic landscape changed drastically. Inflation skyrocketed, and central banks responded by aggressively raising interest rates. Money was no longer free. The cryptocurrency market, which had fueled the NFT bonfire, entered a brutal crypto winter. The collapse of giants like FTX only accelerated the bloodletting and destroyed what little trust remained. Suddenly, the appetite for risk evaporated. People were no longer looking for speculative investments, they were seeking safety. And a JPEG of a lion wearing sunglasses didn't fit into that category. Transaction volume on major marketplaces like OpenSea plummeted by more than 99% from its peak. Collections that were once worth millions now couldn't find a buyer even for a few $100s. The Twitter hexagon, once a status symbol, almost became a mark of shame. The party was over. It was the equivalent of the morning after a legendary celebration. The lights come on, the music stops, the floor is sticky, and you realize you've spent all your savings on confetti and that the person you had a deep conversation with for hours was actually a floor lamp. The narrative had broken. Without a constant stream of new buyers fueled by hype and easy money, the implicit Ponzi scheme behind much of the market was exposed. The value, which had never been in utility or art but in pure speculation, vanished. Thus, the grand utopia of digital ownership, the revolution in art, and the promise of a new creative economy deflated, leaving behind a trail of empty wallets and broken dreams. The story of NFTs is a fascinating case study in the psychology of bubbles. A perfect mix of promising technology, tribal marketing, unique economic conditions, and a healthy dose of human greed. It wasn't just one, but several overlapping bubbles that inflated and burst simultaneously. But have we learned anything? Do you think NFTs will make a comeback in some way, maybe with real utility this time? Or was it just a collective delusion destined not to repeat itself? Did you ever buy one? Tell me in the comments. I promise to read them all and not judge too harshly. By the way, you have to check out this incredible analysis. It's essentially the same story about selling smoke at the price of gold. You'll be surprised by the parallels. It's absolutely worth watching.